Hello, everyone. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to today's program, Using Oracle Analytics to Generate Reports from Data Warehouses, presented by Ron Fagioli. This presentation will be recorded and available for viewing on the ODTUG website. Please chat your questions today in the questions box at any time during Ron's presentation, and they will be addressed at the end of the program. Welcome all, and thank you for attending.
Thanks, Cindy. This is Janine Rafalco. I'm the Marketing Communications Manager at DataVale, and I just wanted to talk real quickly about what DataVale offers. We are a one-stop shop when it comes to data analytics and database needs. We provide strategic consulting and managed services, upgrades, and cloud migration, and we have been an Oracle partner for over 17 years, and we specialize in Oracle database and applications such as EBS, and of course, analytics. So, next slide, please. We would like to invite you to take a quick 5-minute cloud analytics survey. If you take that survey, you'll be entered into a random drawing to win a pair of really cool Bose sunglasses with Bluetooth. And we just want to gauge your position when it comes to cloud analytics. And again, it's quick and it's only 5 minutes. And the link is below. And Cindy, if you can put that in the chat window for everybody. Appreciate you taking that. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Ron Fagioli. Ron?
Thank you, Janine. Yes, as Janine said, my name is Ron Fagioli, and I'm an employee at DataVale, acting as a business data technical jack of all trades type of analyst. I have about 15 years of experience in the particular role of analyst, as well as 20 years of experience altogether. I've worked with many different industries, from engineering, construction, manufacturing, a lot with financial, and now consultation services. There's been a wide variety of projects that I have worked on, from data analytics, data warehousing, master data management, application development, and data integration. So yeah, those have been my specialties over time, and I have been both as a team player, as also have led these particular projects. Many different ways of implementation with waterfall, agile, and of course the ever popular hybrid between the both different methodologies. And I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech University with a major in business information technology, emphasis on decision support systems. So what I'm going to be discussing today is just a few different things concerning different Oracle analytics of how you go about connecting to data warehouse data, and then how you can go about cleaning it and massaging it and doing different data set manipulation in a couple different ways, either just doing some direct data manipulation through the data set functionality, or you can be using data flows. And there's even some data set manipulation that you can do once you start creating projects. And of course, the projects is where the visuals come in as well. So let's get right into it. Loading the data into Oracle Autonomous Database. In this particular case, there's the availability to load data. You can do this in 3 different fashions that are already available within Oracle Analytics. You can actually load flat files like Excel files, JSON files, text files, and CSVs, which are usually the most popular means. And this is just for loading flat files, as I said. You can also connect to external databases to load data. And then finally, you can do connecting storage buckets from the cloud, other cloud services, or even with Oracle Cloud Services, but also include Azure and Google and Amazon. This is actually a screenshot taken directly from the application. I will show that in some of the demos that I'll be performing, but this is just the way it looks. To load this data is a typical drag and drop or a browse option. It is very easy, very user-friendly, very easy to use. Drag and drop your file or select the file as needed. Now, once you have done that, there's a few different ways you can do settings to change how the data is loading into Oracle into Oracle Cloud. There's a settings tab, which involves some of the different options you can do. You see on the screen here, where you can choose to change the name and some of the field field formats. And again, I'll get into this a little bit more when I go through the demo. Then there's the file tab, which gives you just an actual preview. It defaults to 20 records shown, but you can expand it to more, but it will preview what your current file looks like and what you are importing. The tables, if you are actually going to load it into an existing table, it will preview that table as well. And assuming that this isn't your second chance, your second attempt at loading, and there isn't an error, and the first time, well, the first one did fail, there's an error log that you can check as well. So let me go into the demo. I'm already logged into DataVeil's local autonomous data warehouse. We're going to go to the data load option, and once again, defaults to load data, and this is the screenshot that I took earlier, just showing you the different options. I'm going to be loading a flat file, so click next. There we go, and this is the screen I showed before. We're going to do drag and drop, but I'm going to go ahead and select my file. I'll explain what our data is representing in a second as well. So here, at this point, you can load the data accepting all the default options from Oracle. Oracle will establish what the data set is, and it will load it in. However, you can customize each of those options. I also like to note that you can load more than one data set at a time. So by clicking this, the plus sign up here, you can load more data sets. For the sake of time, we're just going to load the one data set. So if you click the pencil here, you can actually change some of the options. And this is, again, the screenshots I showed earlier. You have the options to create a brand new table based off your data. You can insert it into an existing table. You can replace the data within a table. You can drop and then create a brand new table based off the data, or you can merge it into an existing table with keeping the data that's already in it, and this will come in handy if you have transactional data that you want to have imports from different time periods, or as transactions are coming in, you can just append it to the data that's already there. You can change the name, and for the sake of time and just for this sake of conciseness, I'm going to change my table just a little bit. And again, I'll explain what our data set is but just continue on this particular page is that there are some other options. As you can see, this is a CSV file, so it automatically established that it's comma delimited, and that there is an option as well, say if you do have some white space above the file that are in the lead, I guess you can say, of your columns, and your columns start lower, you can choose to ignore those rows that don't pertain to your data, and it will also have the ability to grab the file header of that line of all the rows that you skip. So in this case, you can see it automatically grabbed the column names that I do have here and entered them in. You can do changing to them here, but I'm going to do that a little bit later within the actual application itself. And you can change the data type as well, but again, I'm going to leave them all default and do that later on. To get into our data set a little bit, this is a preview of the file that we will be using. And in light of just some of the things that have been going on, obviously, in the world, this data is actually accumulating all of the climate disasters that have happened over the last 30 years, breaking them down into buckets from 1990s, early 2000s, and now the 2010s and to present day. And this is broken down into each of the countries, so maybe we can see a trend of maybe disasters are getting worse, they're happening more often as it relates to climate. And here's the different ways you can actually preview more rows, but this one is only showing 20. So this country ID is the default, I guess you can say, identifier for each of the countries. This is the country itself, and then here are the three buckets that I spoke of before. The table, again, we're creating a brand new table, so this table will not, this will not show anything because it's not loading into an existing table. And the error log, we haven't failed yet. So let's keep our fingers crossed we don't, but we haven't failed yet, so that's at blank as well. So with that being said, we can go back here and close. Oops. Oh, Okay, so we're going to change this as we already have this table. So let's say claim disasters. Close. And once we're all set here, it changed the target to claim disasters. We're going to hit the play button, let it run, and it's only 250 records, so it should be quick. And there it goes. Green check means it's good. So our data is now loaded into the cloud. So next, talk briefly about how you connect it from the Oracle Analytics desktop. Going into the desktop itself, it's simple to go in and create data set in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Again, you want to create a brand new connection, assuming you haven't done this before. If you have done this before and it's connecting to the same data set, you can go ahead and select the ones you have. As you see, I have existing connections here. But again, we're going to pretend like we didn't have all those. So we're going to create a brand new connection. These are the fields that are required to, the options that you have to connect to the Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse. The connection name, this isn't the name of anything within the data warehouse. This is just how you want it distinguished within the application, within Oracle Analytics. So this is what it will be identified with when you go and you want to create a brand new connection, or if you want to connect to it already, this is what it's going to be named. Description is optional. You can just put in some details there to describe what you are loading. The client credentials is your wallet zip file that is created for you when you are given access on the data warehouse. So that's something you have to browse to your zip file to prove that you do have access to this particular data set. Username and password, that is the Oracle database username and Oracle database password. The service name is a file that is a multi-select from DW high, DW low, DW medium. And that is something that is defined through the wallet when you get that created. So that is automatically filled in. It is editable, but it's something that's defined later within your wallet. So let's go ahead and connect to our data set right now. So we'll go up here to create data set. Create a brand new connection. And we're just going to call it, let's just call it climate. Oops, hang on, no, we're not. Not the time yet, my apologies. So you get the Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse. Now, the connection name, we're going to call this climate. We're going to leave description blank, and now we're going to browse to the wallet. And you can see the service name populate there automatically. And type in our database username. And you'll see this bar, it's common theme. If you're not familiar with the application, this tells you it's loading as it goes from left to right. And connection was created successfully. So now that we have created a successful connection, you're going to see all the data sets that we have access to over here on the left-hand side once this finishes loaded, and it did. So we did load it under the ADWC_user, so we're going to expand that. And we called it claim disaster. So we're just going to drag and drop it into here. And what this is essentially doing is it's just saying that we are going to be creating this connection, and this is going to be the new data set that we can manipulate now. So I'm going to grab the data and create it locally for use in Oracle Analytics. Did not drop. Oh, still thinking. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Now, when this loads, it will show a preview of our file. There it is. So that's our file that we have loaded into Autonomous Data Warehouse. So we're going to save this as a brand new data set, so we no longer have to go through the connection. And once again, thinking. Okay, well, while that's thinking, we'll move on to the next section. Once that saves, that's pretty much the last step as far as connecting to the database. Oh, it just finished. Okay, so Now let's get into data set manipulation, where will happen is the majority of your cleaning and making sure it's ready for visualization, that it is the best representation of your data. In the bottom left-hand side of the screen, there's a few different things you can do right off the bat. You can change columns you can change a column name. You can change them from measures or attributes. Measures are the quantitative values that you might want to add, add average, min, max, and then attributes are usually categorical data. They usually are, I guess you can say, text fields, but that's not always the case. In that particular exception, a year column might be an attribute as opposed to measure, so you make sure that year doesn't add or anything like that. The data type, as I said, is typically number or text, or actually the options are number and text. If it is a number, the different aggregation methods that you can choose to pick are sum, average, min, max, if you're looking for the best or worst value within the column, and count of all the values that are there, or count just the unique values, or count distinct values that are in the list. And that's only if you're doing like a group by, you're aggregating the data all together. If it is a number, there's a few different things you can do here as well. You can choose for it to be a number, a currency, or percent. The different kind of formats you can do for thousand separator and decimal places, or even abbreviation you can make as well. And that's just something that will, make your visuals a little bit more detailed. Other manipulations you can do besides those default ones right off the bat is that you can duplicate a column if you want to, say, do a calculation on the column, but you want the value to remain intact. You can duplicate it and then perform the action on the clone column. You can group the data, and with the grouping of the data, it's like, just to give you an example, in our case, because we do have countries listed in our data set, you can group them potentially based off their continent and create a brand new field to say, okay, you're in China, this is an Asia continent. Split and concatenate are direct opposites of each other. For split, if you have a first name, last name in a field, you can split that and make it its two unique fields, with first name being in one, last name being in the other. And concatenate does the exact opposite. If you have first name in one, last name in the other, concatenate will bring it together into one column. Binning is actually a way of, again, creating a category based on the quantity of the data. So for instance, in our data, if a country has over, say, 5 climate disasters in the last, that decade span, maybe that is a high risk country, while less than that would be a low risk country. So you can create a bin saying less than 5 is low, while greater than 5 is high. Replace is a way of searching through your data and replacing values. Maybe if you have sensitive data, or if there's some string value in there that was misentered, you can go ahead and just replace the text value. And you can do entire column level functions. You can make the entire column that's text uppercase, lowercase, or trim off unneeded characters or spacing on the column if necessary. And again, the same thing applies for numeric. You can perform these particular functions against the entire column if you like as well. Data enrichment, I'm not going to read this entire slide, but data enrichment is a very powerful tool that's automatically provided within Oracle Analytics. And what it does is it allows you to flesh out your data on the go with a single click. I can't even exaggerate. It's just a single click that it allows you to do. For instance, if you have a date field that's month, day, year, it will suggest potentially, do you want a column just for the month? Do you want a column just for the day? Do you want a column just for the year? And you can do that with a single click. If the Oracle application, I failed to mention, automatically recognizes this. So as it profiles your data and it understands what is stored in there, it will actually automatically provide you these particular suggestions. And I'll show you in the demo. But if for another case, it might show, if it thinks that one of the values is a social security number, it will ask you if you want to mask it, if you want to obfuscate it. So actually it will be hidden. And in our case, because we're dealing with country data, it will ask you a wide variety of things, such as what continent it belongs to, what region it belongs to, the capital city, currency. It's an extremely powerful tool to just flesh out your data and make things even easier to use, or more detailed. So let's get into the demo and I'll show you some of these actions. So in this particular case, we're going to go to our data set, and this is the data set that we just loaded. And we're going to choose to open it. Okay, so right off the bat, there's a few different things. Now, this is the first screenshots I showed you. Is here the different things you can do: change the name, change it from measure, number, how it's aggregated, things like that. And then if it is a number, here are the different formats you can do. So there's all the quick functionality you can do. You can see at the top here, it also has a profiler. In this particular data set, it might not be that valuable because these are unique values for each country. So this number doesn't really mean a whole lot, or this profile doesn't really help you a whole lot. But maybe in the numbers here, you can see that there are countries that have, the majority of the countries only have had 1 or 2 disasters in that particular time frame. So the profiler here, as you get more and more complicated data, it can be can be useful to actually clean your data as well. So you maybe be able to see, oh, there's a percentage of data that needs to be corrected. We need to, go ahead and do a replace functionality on that. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and change the names of the columns just to make them easier to work with. So we're going to go up here, rename, and we're just going to say this is country. Next thing we're going to do is we'll go over here, and just so it doesn't say, if I expand this, you can see the column says these are climate occurrences or climate disasters that have happened between 1990 and 1999. So let's go ahead and rename that. And I'm just going to call it, just to shorten it, CO for climate occurrences, and say, and 1990 to 1999. And do that one more time for each of them. (2000 to 2009). Oh, I messed that up, didn't I? I'll go back and change that. Just so they all match. Okay, there we go. Okay, now, as we did all of that, you will see a running tally here of all the changes we did. See, here's where we renamed country. This is where we renamed other columns: CO 1990, CO 2000, CO 2010. These are each running in sequence. They're not running simultaneously. So when we get finished and we're happy with the data set, we're going to go ahead and save it, and it's going to run all of these, and it's going to run it one line at a time. So keep that in mind. The next thing we want to do is we're going to create a brand new column. Let's just say we want to actually have a total running count of all of the climate disasters that have happened over the last 30 years. So we're going to right click here, and we're going to say create a brand new column. And we're going to call this CO total. And we're going to do a simple functionality here. We're going to add one column to the next and to the next. And this validate button will actually check to make sure that everything is syntactically correct. So validate, calculations are validated, and then we're going to add the step. Okay, so the step is added, but if you really look at it, there's something that went wrong. You can see here that there are values, in this particular case for Albania, for 1990, in the 1990s and the early 2000s, 1 and 1, but there's nothing that's been calculated. The reason for this is because these fields are null, and it can't add a null field. It doesn't recognize that as a number, so as a result, it's almost like saying that this different equation errored out. So how do we correct that? How do we make sure that we can get that total in there? And again, this goes in just with some cleaning of the data. What we're going to do is we're going to edit each of these columns, and we're going to use a simple functionality called isNull. or if null, I apologize, if null. And we're going to say, if this field is null, make it 0. Oops. Okay, validate. There we go, add step. You can see now there are no gaps, it's now just 0. We need to do that 2 more times. Okay, una más. Okay, add step. Now we have all the gaps filled in, but the problem is that now you see that CO total still does not have the sum here. And the reason I said that is, and reason that is, as I said earlier, these are running in sequence. So this addition was happening prior to these were filled in with zeros. So to correct that, where we have create a column CO total over here, we're going to go ahead and delete that step. So now it's gone, and we're going to go ahead and recreate it. Validate one more time. Add the step, and now we have our CO, our climate occurrences all filled out correctly. And just to make sure that these are recognized as measures, we need to go ahead and change them all back. With the if null function, it automatically converted them. And because it converted them to text, this also came out as text. So we're going to go ahead and change them all back to measures. Okay. Okay, so now our data is looking a lot better. We created a column. Now let's go talk a little bit about the enrichment option. So as I said, it recognizes this as a country, and these are all the different things you can do with country that it recognizes. You can go ahead and create, you can add in information with different abbreviations for the country. You can put the capital, square kilometer, population. It's crazy some of the things you can do here. The different languages, neighboring countries. We're going to keep this pretty simple though, and with single click, we're going to put in the ISO 3, and this is going to be an alpha 3-letter code, how the country standard abbreviation for the country. So there we go. Now it has a standard country code, 3-letter alpha code. And one other thing I'm going to do, just in case we want to actually do some reporting on the continent, we're going to go ahead and add the continent as well. So there we go. Now we have the continent information here as well. So again, it was with a single click, and it was all added to your data. And here's a little bit better of a representation of the profiling up here. You can see that 28% of the countries in this list are in Africa, and it's just a way of showing the profiling tool. So now we're finished with that. We're going to go ahead and save this. And save masters. And oops, should have known that was going to happen. Disasters 1. Okay, so while that's saving, we can move on to the next section. We're going to do data set manipulations now with data flows. Now, data flows offer you a few different advantages as opposed to what we just did just by opening the data set. Data flows can actually provide a little bit more of some joining of the tables and a little more functionality as far as joining and unioning the tables, if you're familiar with that functionality within databases. It does provide all of the previous options as well, as far as name changes and creating columns and things like that, but it's just a little bit more of a powerful tool in that sense. As I said, here are the different things it can do: join, union, some aggregate, and it allows to save a brand new data set based off of what you've done. These are the functionalities that I talked about in the previous section that it still provides: renaming, binning, add columns, things like that. And finally, it also has some model forecasting, machine learning things that can be performed on your data set as well. A little bit more advanced type stuff for training models and actually for prediction purposes. And another thing that it does is that it allows you, if you feel that you have data sets that are of the same format, and you know you need to run multiple different data sets and they're using the exact same functionality, it allows you to save the data flow and run it over multiple data sets instead of having to recreate a brand new data set each and every time. So it's powerful in that tool as well. So you don't have to keep on repeatedly creating data flows. You can just plug in a new data set and let it run. So let's go back and I'll show you some data flow functionality as well. So it did save. So this is what we just left off with. So we're going to create a brand new data flow, same way we did with the data set. And we're going to add our data set that we just did, which was, I believe it was disasters 1. I thought it was disasters 1. Maybe it wasn't disasters 1. Oh, no, never mind, here it is. Sorry about that. Okay, so now you can see it's going to start this workflow of steps that the data is going to go through. It has our data here. Just for starters, here are the different functionalities you can do. So it was the screenshot I showed earlier. Just to get into something that we didn't do previously, we can go ahead and rename the columns while we're here from the new, based off of the new columns we entered from enrichment. So now we have country continent. Instead of saying country continent, let's just call it continent. And then for ISO 3, instead of country ISO 3, we're just going to call it ISO. Okay, so now we rename the columns, simple. We're going to go ahead and add a brand new data set. And we're going to combine this data set. We have the climate disasters right now, but we're going to combine this, say, with meteorological disasters, which is the same table, same set of data, just based off of a different, I guess you could say, disaster type, and we're going to see how they compare. So I'm going to add this data set that I worked with previously. And once again, you can see the steps here. Now it's adding this and it's going to join them together. So in this particular case, we're going to join them on the ISO data that we brought in, the standard country definition. So instead of saying country ID, we can do it on country ID, but we're going to leverage the code that we enriched the data with. So ISO to ISO. So this is the 3-letter alpha abbreviation. And then after that's joined, we're going to have duplicate columns because you see there's no way to select the columns here. You have to do that in a different step. So now we're going to select the columns here. Let's remove them all. The left here is stuff that is not in the data set. The right is what's going to be in the data set. So we do want the country ID, and hit control. You can grab the more than one selection. Control, we want country ID, we want country, we want continent, we want ISO. Then we also want the occurrences from each of the decades and occurrence total. Now here's the duplicate data. This is from the meteorological data that we don't need. We don't need that duplicate data, but we do want the number count for each of the decades. So we'll select all of those and say, just add selected. And there we go. Now we have a combined data set from 2 data sets. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to save the data to something brand new. We'll just call it combined data set. Okay. Now, it's not run yet. You have to save it. Save it under a brand new data flow. Demo DF. Is it thinking? There we go. Data flow was successfully saved. Now, again, it's still not ran yet, but we'll go ahead and click the play button, and it will run the data set, the data flow, and combine our data. That might take a little bit, so I'm gonna let that run in the background and move on to the next section. Creating a project. When you create a project, there's gonna be different tabs at the top to start. The data section is another way, another opportunity to manipulate your data, combine the data. So you can actually create a data map, not a data map, I guess you can say a class diagram, a table diagram of the different table and how they're connected. Visualizing is exactly what it says. It's where we're going to start creating the graphs, the charts, and everything else that you do to actually represent your data and tell your story. And narrate is just another option actually of telling your story. It allows you to create presentations, and I'll show you that as well. So in this particular, one of the other great functionalities that allow you to very quickly create visualizations on the fly without having to do a lot of work and actually maybe do a little bit of trial and error on your visualizations is that Oracle has the ability to create fast visualizations. So what you do on the left-hand side on your data, and I'll demonstrate this, is you select the metrics and the fields that you want represented, and right click on them and it will automatically give you an option to create the best visualization. So if it says, well, you have this, this, and this, and this, I think it's best that you use a bar chart. So this is what the bar chart would look like. And it's incredibly powerful because you actually just get to see it happen very quickly. And you can think, no, I don't want to do this. I think it'd be better this way. And then you can go do your own graphing as well. But this is just a good way to start getting ideas of how to display your data. Now, assuming that those do not come out and those best visualizations is not what your cup of tea is, these are out of the box provided from Oracle Analytics. As you can see, it's very vast. You have 11 different bar charts. You have 7 different line charts, scatters, grids, pies. In the middle here, there's ability to filter your data to actually have some, make the reports a little bit more dynamic. And then there's also some miscellaneous ones. Now, assuming all of this is not, again, not what you need, and there's more that you need, you also have the ability to go out to Oracle and download each of the different plugins you want or different visuals that you want that are available. In this particular case, I do have Calendar Heat Map and I have Racing Bars plugin, which I think is pretty neat that I like to do with my data. And the narrate option. Now the narrate option, as I said, is a different way of displaying your data as if you want to tell the story. And instead of, say, in a lot of different applications or even in Oracle, if you have a lot of these graphs, you would have to copy and paste them out, put them in your slideshow. With the narrate option, it actually allows you to move all of your data within a slideshow, within the application itself, and you can actually display it that way, as opposed to having to go through an extra process to copy and paste it out, export, things like that. So I'll show you that as well. So let's go into a demo with our new created data set. Now, if we click the data, we should see the combined data disasters, I guess you can say. We're going to just click on it and it's automatically going to open us up into a project. And as you can see, there are the data, the visualize, and the narrate at the top here, as I spoke of earlier. It's currently loading our data, so give it 1 second. Okay, there it is. So everything is listed out as we combined after the data flow. A little bit here in the data, as you can see, we only have loaded 1 table, but as I said, you can actually still add more data in here and combine it. I'll give you a brief example of that. So here I have another table that has country codes right here. And this country codes data just has a little bit more information for distinguishing the country data. You know, it has codes, it has region, it has sub-region, it has continent, it has a few other things. And I'm going to bring it in just to show you that it will, how you can join it from this as well. So we're going to add that to the project. And there's our trusty load bar. Okay, so now it's brought into project, but these are still mutually exclusive. They're not combined. They're not going to be related to each other. So if you hover in between, you'll see that there is a 0, which is showing that there are 0 connections. So if you click on that, it's going to ask you, well, tell me what to connect on. And in this particular case, country codes, instead of an ISO code, they actually define it as an alpha 3 code. So that's an alpha 3 code. And for the one that we just used, we're going to combine it on the ISO. So that's going to combine on a 3-digit abbreviation. And let that calculate. Usually doesn't take this long, but I'm sure I said that before. All right, there we go. So now it's combined, and you can see our second data set in here now. And as they're related, it will change, obviously, the graphs as needed if you are using fields from both different tables. So let's get into visualization. Now, let's just say we don't really know exactly what we want to start with. Let's go ahead and grab country. Let's grab the climate total as well as the meteorological total. And we're going to right click and say, yeah, create the best visualization. Give me something. So in this particular case, it populated the grammar side here. And now it actually created our graph. It created a scatter graph, no issue. They felt this was the best way of presenting it. You have a few different outliers here. You can say the United States is not doing too hot, and there's a different Australia and China, and it shows the meteorological as well as the climate totals in each. If we're okay with that, the easiest thing to do now is make it, you know, a little bit more presentable. We can go ahead and change the title. Let's go ahead and say meteorological, oops, and climate disasters. So we change our title. Now the title has been changed. Let's go ahead and change our access information as well, so it doesn't just say what the field is. This is horizontal, so this will be, oops, climate. And where is my vertical? Vertical. There we go. So now you can see each of our access, our title are all been customized. Now, assuming we're okay with that, let's say we're moving on. Now, Oracle is broken up into Canvas instead of like worksheets, which you would be used to seeing in Excel. They call them canvases. You can rename these canvases, but I'm just going to leave them the same. Let's go ahead and create a brand new canvas. Let's say for this particular canvas, we want to create our own, but we're going to create a map. So let's drag and drop the map. So now it's prepared for a map. It has the parameters that it's looking for a map. And if we supply the parameters correctly, like country here, let's do country and say we want to see how the country goes for, let's just do the total again. So we have the most numbers. Just drag and drop it actually onto the map, and it will automatically place it in these particular values to make it represent the best as Oracle sees fit. Let it think. Okay, so now in this particular case, you can see it created almost like a heat map where each of the countries that have only had one are light green, while the ones that have the most are, excuse me, had the most disasters in the last 30 years. United States, again, isn't doing too hot. They have 102, which is the lead. And then Australia looks like they might be second, excuse me, with 52. So we're okay with that. But now let's see how that compares to how it compares to the meteorological disasters. So let's go ahead and edit this, and we can easily duplicate this visual and remove the parameters and make it, again, very quickly create a brand new one. So now we remove the climate totals. Let's go ahead and put in the meteorological totals. Oops, didn't work that time. There we go. Let it think. And the same thing. It automatically said, okay, let's do a heat map, but once again, with the countries showing darker if they've had more disasters compared to other ones. And there's been a few more meteorological disasters. As you can see, the max is 102 here, is only 459 here for meteorological. So again, let's just say we're good with that. There's nothing else we want to do with that. We're fine. Let's go ahead and create our own, say, dynamic one. So in this case, we're actually going to drag a filter in. Do a list box filter. And in the list box filter, we are going to add the country data. And now you can see that we have a list box that should show every single one of the country's records. There they all are. So what can we do with that? Let's go ahead and create a bar chart. And in this bar chart, we're going to show the decade progression of the climate disasters. I'm going to put this in the y-axis. Now what it's going to do, this is showing all of them. From across the world. So it's saying there's 428 in 1990s, but there's only 251 in the early 2000s and even less in the most recent decade, which is counter to what some believe as far as disasters happening. So that's interesting, right? Next thing you can do is you can actually say, well, let's see how that actually pertains to other countries. Let's go to China. No, actually, let's go to Brazil. So you can filter, click Brazil, and say, oh, Brazil actually follows that trend as well. They had 13, 5, and 4. So let's see how that compares to the meteorological then. So once again, quickly and easily, you can go to Edit, duplicate this, and it'll side by side. And in this second one, we're going to remove the climate, and we're going to add the 3 decades of meteorological. So now in this case, Brazil is showing that there isn't really a trend. Majority of them happened here in the early 2000s as opposed to the 1990s and other 2000s. And you can do this again with each country as needed. They all update dynamically. Okay, and then likewise, you can see, oh, but there is a trend up for China, while there might not be a trend here for climate. Okay, so now all that's being said, all that's done, let's say you're completely happy with all these, we can go to the narrate option. Now we have 3 different canvases, and what you can do now is drag and drop each of these canvases when they do load. I'm not going to wait for them to load because we are running a little bit short on time. You can drag and drop each and every single one of these canvases down here at the bottom, and put them in any order that you want, and you can change them. And visually, you can put different titles on here. You can do a few different other things, change the background, make them present a little bit nicer for the shortage of time. I'm not going to be performing any of that. But then once you're done, here's the play option where you can actually play the actual slideshow now. You can see that each of them are represented here in a slideshow, not needing to import and export them out if you don't have to. There is one more thing I'd like to discuss, and that is the advanced analytics. There is built-in features for, I have to go back to visualize for this. For advanced analytics, if you go back to Canvas 1, you can see here we have our scatter. In this particular thing, and in this particular option, if you go to this this last option here on the right in the bottom right-hand corner, you can add statistics. In this particular case, it's if you want to see outliers, which ones don't really match the trend of the disaster or the trend of the numbers that we're seeing. You can go ahead and add. You can automatically identify which ones are the outliers. This one might take a little while. I know it took a little while yesterday. And another option that I would like to have shown, if it would let this one complete, is that it will also allow you to add a trend line. So we'll take whatever, obviously whatever the scatter is, and decide which a line that actually best represents the data, and put in, insert a trend line. There we go. So now it's saying that all these are outliers, which makes sense. I mean, the majority of the data is all down here. All these out here are just, they seem like they don't belong. Whether it's true or not is a different story, but this is just what Oracle is calculating. And then finally, the reference line. Oh, not the reference line. I don't want the reference line. I want the trend line. And once again, that might take a little while. And nope, still going. There we go. So there is our trend line showing that based off the data, that is what Oracle calculates the trend line at 95% confidence. Okay. So with all that being said, that is the end of what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. That was fantastic. And I just want to remind everybody to please take that 5-minute survey so that you can be entered into a random drawing to win these really cool Bose sunglasses with Bluetooth. And now we have about 5 minutes to take maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. If you can type your questions in the chat box, and then Ron will answer them. Thank you again for Ron for your presentation, and the audience for attending, taking the survey, and for your questions.
Okay. If there are any questions, please go ahead and enter them. Okay. Question has come in concerning I guess you can say the recommended usage for Oracle Analytics Desktop. In this particular case, as I know a lot of people might have people who do reporting have seen that obviously the more and more data you might throw at some of these desktop applications, there is potential for them to start suffering as far as performance goes. So that the question, I believe, if I'm reading it correctly, is pertaining to that. In that particular case, it is something that these are very powerful tools, but it does happen. It happens in, I know, in other tools like Power BI, Tableau. It happens in Oracle Analytics as well. I feel Oracle Analytics Desktop is a little bit more powerful to do it, but if you are dealing with large amounts of data, it is, and again, I'm only dealing with 250 records in these particular data sets. So obviously, the more and more that you throw at it, it probably is better to start moving that to the cloud and start accessing the cloud a little bit more with the more horsepower than, say, your laptop can provide. If that makes sense. I hope that answers your question. This is the desktop tool that you are looking at right here. This is the Oracle Analytics Desktop. That's the next question. Does it include the desktop? There's also the web version where you can go out to the actual autonomous cloud and actually perform it right there on the server as well. So that's another question that came in. Is there anything else? Okay. I think does Oracle provide a way to share published visualizations on the web? If you are talking about if you are in development and developing your own, the answer to that question, I believe, I'm fairly confident, is yes. For that one slide that I shown here, to go back, yes. one slide I did show here is that as you do develop them and that you can publish them out to the website. Now, I'm not sure if Oracle most likely needs to go through and actually approve them and make sure that they're functioning correctly. I don't doubt that for a second, but I do believe the majority of these that are published out there come from developers external to Oracle. I'm fairly confident about that. If that's the question that you have about sharing your own visualizations. Does Analytic Desktop and Analytic Cloud provide the same functionality? Are there any differences? From my understanding, and again, I'm going to be completely transparent here. I haven't worked with the cloud per se as far as doing the reporting. The reporting that I have done has primarily been in the desktop version, which means I haven't been working with the larger of the data sets that would entail using the cloud at this point. My understanding is that it does have the exact same data capabilities and the functionalities that are required. Again, I'm speaking simply based off of my own reading and understanding of the cloud availability analytics. I haven't actually used it myself, again, completely transparent, but it does have that same functionality. Okay. I think that was the last question that I see came in.
I think so too, Ron. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Everybody, thank you for attending and have a great day. Thank you, Janine and Ron.
Okay. Bye, everybody.